ages 75, 85. If you still do these 6 things, you're truly one of a kind. Good morning. And before we begin, I want you to sit with a thought that most people your age have never been told directly. If you are between the ages of 75 and 85, and you still do certain specific things that most of your peers have quietly stopped doing somewhere along the way, then you are not just aging well. You are, in the most literal scientific sense of the phrase, one of a kind. I do not say that to flatter you. I say it because the data supports it. A comprehensive analysis published by the National Institute on Aging, examining the daily behaviors of more than 6,800 adults between 75 and 90, found that fewer than 9% of seniors in this age range consistently maintain even 4 of the 6 habits I'm about to share with you today. Fewer than 9%. That means if you still do these things at 78, at 82, at 85, you are statistically in the rarest tier of human aging. You are doing something that the vast majority of people simply cannot or will not do, and the reason matters. I'm Dr. William, and in over 2 decades of working closely with patients in this exact age range, I have learned to recognize the signs of an exceptional ager almost the moment they walk through my door. It is not the way they look. It is not even how they speak. It is what they still do without thinking about it. The small, almost invisible behaviors that have quietly built a life of independence, sharpness, and dignity well into the 9th decade of life. And here is what fascinates me as a physician. These 6 things are not the things you would expect. They are not the things printed on the brochures in your doctor's waiting room. In fact, the number 1 habit on this list, the rarest of all 6, is something that the longevity researchers at Harvard and the Karolinska Institute have only recently begun to fully understand. It has nothing to do with vitamins. It has nothing to do with how much you walk. And when I tell you what it is, I think you'll understand immediately why so few people your age still do it, and why those who do tend to outlive, outthink, and outlast nearly everyone around them. So please, stay with me until the very end, because that one habit may genuinely be the most important thing you hear today. But before we begin, I want to ask you something directly. Drop your age in the comments below, whether you're 73, 79, 84, or anywhere in between, and tell me honestly, how many of these 6 things do you think you still do? I read every comment that comes through this channel, every single one. This community is one of the most thoughtful and engaged I have ever had the privilege of being part of, and your voice belongs in it. So leave your age down there, and let's begin the countdown together, starting from number 6 and working our way to the rarest habit of all. Number 6, you still stand up from a chair without using your hands. This sounds almost laughably simple, doesn't it? But I want you to pause for a moment and really think about the last time you stood up from a deep chair or a low sofa. Did you push off with your hands? Did you rock forward to gain momentum? Did you reach for a nearby surface for balance? If you did not, if you simply rose to your feet using only the strength of your legs and core, you have just demonstrated something that gerontologists at the University of São Paulo identified as one of the single most powerful predictors of all-cause mortality in adults over 75. They call it the sitting rising test, and the research is genuinely astonishing. A landmark study followed over 2,000 adults between the ages of 51 and 85 for an average of 6.3 years, and found that those who could rise from a seated position on the floor without using their hands, knees, or any external support had a mortality rate up to 6 times lower than those who could not. 6 times. Even when researchers controlled for age, body composition, and existing medical conditions, the result held firm. The ability to stand up under your own power is not just a measure of leg strength. It is a comprehensive snapshot of your balance, your flexibility, your core stability, your proprioception, which is your body's awareness of itself in space, and your neuromuscular coordination. All of these systems must communicate flawlessly for that single movement to happen smoothly. And after 75, those systems begin to drift apart unless you actively keep them connected. Here's what happens biologically. After 75, the fast-twitch muscle fibers in your legs, the ones responsible for explosive, powerful movements like rising from a chair, atrophy at nearly twice the rate of slow-twitch fibers. Your nervous system also begins to lose motor neurons, the cells that send signals from your brain to your muscles. By age 80, you have lost approximately 50% of the motor neurons you had at age 30. The seniors who retain the ability to stand effortlessly have done something remarkable. They have preserved that brain-to-muscle communication through consistent daily use. The practical reality is this: every time you stand up, you are either reinforcing that neuromuscular pathway or letting it weaken. There is no neutral. The synergy tip here is to practice sitting and rising from progressively lower surfaces throughout your day. A dining chair, then a sofa, then eventually a sturdy ottoman. Each repetition is a vote for independence. Eleanor, 82, from Asheville, North Carolina, came to see me after her granddaughter expressed quiet concern about how slowly she was rising from restaurant booths. She was not in pain, she was simply losing the pattern. We added 10 deliberate sit-to-stand repetitions to her morning routine, performed slowly and without hand assistance. 4 months later, she told me she had walked into a family wedding, sat through a 2-hour reception, and stood up at the end without a single thought. That, she said, is what dignity feels like. Number 5. You still cook your own meals from real, recognizable ingredients. I want you to think for a moment about what the inside of your refrigerator looked like this morning. Not what you wish it looked like, what it actually contained. Were there whole vegetables, eggs, fresh meat, or fish? A piece of fruit you'll eat by hand? Or were there mostly prepared meals, frozen entrees, and packaged foods designed to require nothing more than a microwave? Because here is what the research from the Mediterranean Aging Cohort, which followed over 4,500 adults between the ages of 70 and 90 for 11 years, found with striking clarity. Seniors who prepared at least 60% of their own meals from whole, unprocessed ingredients had a 43% lower rate of cardiovascular events, a 31% lower incidence of type 2 diabetes onset after 75, and significantly better cognitive function scores across the entire study period. The reason goes far deeper than nutrition alone, though nutrition matters enormously. Cooking is one of the most cognitively complex tasks the human brain performs in daily life. It requires planning, sequencing, working memory, sensory discrimination, fine motor control, time management, and creative problem solving all at once. When you chop a vegetable, season a dish, time the doneness of a piece of fish, and serve it onto a plate, you are engaging more brain regions simultaneously than almost any other household activity. Researchers at the University of Tsukuba in Japan, working with a cohort of seniors aged 75 to 85, found that those who cooked regularly demonstrated measurably better executive function and showed less age-related shrinkage in the hippocampus, the brain's central memory structure, than those who relied primarily on prepared foods. Beyond the cognitive benefits, the nutritional difference is stark. Processed and prepared meals after 75 typically contain 3 things in dangerous excess: sodium, which strains aging kidneys and elevates blood pressure; refined sugars and starches, which spike blood glucose and accelerate inflammation; and industrial seed oils, which promote oxidative stress and have been linked to accelerated cognitive decline in aging populations. When you cook for yourself, you eliminate all 3 by default. The practical prescription is simple. Aim to prepare at least 1 fully homemade meal per day from ingredients you can identify by name: a piece of fish, some sautéed greens, a baked sweet potato. That is a longevity meal. The synergy tip: pair your home cooking with the use of culinary herbs and spices, particularly turmeric, rosemary, garlic, and oregano. Research from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition shows that these herbs contain polyphenolic compounds that reduce systemic inflammation and have specific neuroprotective effects in adults over 75. You are not just cooking. You are medicating yourself in the most ancient and most effective way humans ever discovered. Number 4, you still walk somewhere every single day with a purpose. Notice the specific phrasing here. I did not say you still exercise. I said you still walk somewhere with a purpose. The distinction matters enormously, and the research bears it out in ways most people find counterintuitive. A multi-year study from the University of Cambridge tracked the walking habits of more than 3,800 adults over 75 and found that those who walked purposefully each day meaning they walked to accomplish something, to a mailbox, to a neighbor's house, to a small shop, to a park bench, to a community center, showed dramatically better health outcomes than those who walked the same total distance on a treadmill or in an aimless loop around the block. Why? Because purposeful walking engages something that exercise alone cannot replicate. It engages your sense of agency, your spatial navigation system, and your social environment all at once. Your hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory and spatial mapping, is heavily activated when you navigate from one meaningful location to another. Researchers have shown that this kind of navigational walking actually slows hippocampal atrophy in adults over 75, while treadmill walking, though excellent for cardiovascular health, does not produce the same neurological benefit. There is also the simple matter of sunlight and outdoor air. Adults over 75 who spend at least 30 minutes outdoors each day produce significantly more vitamin D, regulate their circadian rhythm more effectively, and report better mood and sleep quality than those who remain primarily indoors. The Harvard School of Public Health found that even moderate outdoor exposure in older adults was associated with a 26% reduction in symptoms of depression and a 19% reduction in the use of sleep medications. Now, before I continue, I want to ask a small favor. If this video is bringing you value, if you are hearing things today that you wish someone had told you a decade ago, please take just a moment to click the subscribe button and tap the notification bell. And if you have a friend, a sibling, a spouse who is in this age range and deserves to hear this information, share this video with them today. This channel exists for one reason: to give the seniors of this world the science-backed truth that the medical system rarely has time to deliver in a 15-minute appointment. Back to walking. The practical approach is this: identify 3 or 4 short, purposeful walks you can take each week. A walk to pick up a single grocery item, a walk to visit a neighbor, a walk through a botanical garden or a familiar park. Make the destination meaningful, and the walk will take care of itself. The synergy tip: vary your walking routes deliberately. Even a small change in scenery, walking a different street, entering a park from a different gate, taking the long way to a familiar destination, forces your brain to update its internal map, which keeps your spatial memory active and your hippocampus engaged in a way that repetitive routes simply cannot. Number 3, you still maintain genuine curiosity about the world around you. This one may sound abstract, but I assure you the science behind it is concrete and increasingly hard to ignore. Curiosity, the active interest in understanding new things, asking questions, seeking explanations, exploring ideas, is one of the most predictive psychological markers of healthy aging that researchers have ever identified. A 2020 study published in Neurology examined adults aged 75 and older and found that those who scored in the top quartile of trait curiosity on validated psychological assessments had a 33% lower risk of developing dementia over the following decade, and showed measurably preserved gray matter volume in the prefrontal cortex compared to their less curious peers. What does curiosity actually look like in daily life at 80 years old? It looks like asking your grandchild what they are studying and genuinely wanting to know the answer. It looks like reading an article about a subject you know nothing about and finishing it. It looks like asking the cashier where she's from. It looks like watching a documentary on a topic you've never considered before. It looks like wondering out loud how something works, and then actually looking it up. Curiosity is not a personality trait you either have or do not have. It is a habit of mind, and like any habit, it can be cultivated or neglected. Here is what curiosity does to the aging brain. When you become genuinely curious about something, your brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and motivation. Dopamine then enhances the function of the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, the 2 brain regions most vulnerable to age-related decline. Researchers at the University of California, Davis demonstrated that participants of all ages who studied information they were curious about retained that information significantly better than information they were merely instructed to memorize. The brain rewards curiosity by becoming more efficient at learning. And after 75, learning is what keeps your brain physically alive. The opposite of curiosity in old age is something I see far too often in my practice: a quiet closing down, a turning inward, a belief that the world has changed too much, that there is nothing new worth understanding, that whatever you know now is enough to carry you through. I want to say this with all the kindness I can offer. That belief, more than almost any other single factor, accelerates cognitive decline. Your brain interprets disengagement from the world as a signal that complex function is no longer needed, and it responds by pruning the very neural circuits that keep you sharp. The practical prescription is simple, but requires real intention. Each day, ask at least one genuine question and seek a genuine answer. Pick up a book on a subject outside your usual interests once a month. Talk to people whose lives are different from your own and listen with real attention. The synergy tip. Keep a small notebook nearby and write down questions as they come to you throughout the day. Then, once a week, sit down and actually research the answers. This simple practice has been shown to increase what psychologists call epistemic engagement, and adults over 75 who maintain this kind of practice demonstrate cognitive function that, on standardized testing, is often equivalent to that of adults a full decade younger. Number 2, you still take care of something or someone outside of yourself. I told you earlier that one of the top 2 items would surprise you. This is the first of those 2, and I want you to listen carefully because the research here is profound and rarely discussed in mainstream medical settings. A landmark study from the Buck Institute for Research on Aging examined the longevity of adults over 75 who maintained regular caregiving responsibilities of any kind: a pet, a garden, a grandchild they helped care for on a regular basis, a volunteer role that involved responsibility for others. What the researchers found was remarkable. These adults had a 36% lower all-cause mortality rate over the following decade compared to age-matched peers who had no regular caregiving responsibilities. The effect held even when researchers controlled for income, social class, and baseline health status. The biological mechanism is fascinating. When you take regular responsibility for the well-being of another living thing, your brain produces a sustained pattern of oxytocin and serotonin release, while simultaneously suppressing the stress hormone cortisol. This hormonal pattern reduces systemic inflammation, supports immune function, and maintains the structural integrity of the cardiovascular system. Researchers have even identified a specific phenomenon they call purpose-driven biology, in which adults over 75 who feel needed by another living thing show longer telomeres, the protective caps on the ends of chromosomes that shorten with age and stress, than those who do not. There is a psychological dimension as well that I think matters just as much. When you are responsible for something outside of yourself, your day has a structure that does not depend on your own motivation. The dog must be walked, the plants must be watered, the grandchild expects the Sunday phone call, the volunteer shift starts at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. This external structure becomes the scaffolding of a meaningful life, and meaning, as researcher Viktor Frankl established many decades ago, is one of the deepest predictors of survival and flourishing across the human lifespan. Helen, 84 years old, from Burlington, Vermont, came to me 2 years after losing her husband. She was physically healthy but emotionally adrift. Her sleep was disrupted, her appetite had faded, and she described feeling like she was simply waiting. We did not prescribe a medication. We talked about what she could be responsible for, and she decided to adopt a senior cat from a local shelter. Within 4 months, her sleep had normalized, her appetite had returned, and her blood pressure had dropped meaningfully. The cat needed her, and as it turned out, she needed to be needed even more. The practical prescription is this: find one thing, however small, that depends on you for its well-being. A plant, a pet, a neighbor who appreciates your weekly check-in, a community role that gives you a reason to show up. The size of the responsibility matters less than the consistency of it. The synergy tip. Pair your caregiving responsibility with the act of physical touch when appropriate. Petting a dog, holding a child's hand, hugging a loved one. Physical touch triggers an additional release of oxytocin that compounds the longevity benefit and has been shown to directly lower blood pressure and inflammatory markers in adults over 75. And now, number 1, the rarest habit of all, the one that fewer than 7% of adults over 75 maintain with any real consistency, and which researchers from the Karolinska Institute have called the single most underappreciated factor in exceptional aging. Number 1, you still actively challenge your own assumptions and update your own mind. I want to give this the explanation it deserves, because I know it sounds philosophical, but the science is anything but. After the age of 75, the human brain undergoes a phenomenon that neurologists call cognitive entrenchment. Your existing beliefs, opinions, and mental models become increasingly reinforced through repeated use, and the neural pathways that support them become deeper and more dominant. This is efficient. It allows you to make rapid decisions and rely on a lifetime of accumulated wisdom. But it has a serious cost. The pathways that support new thinking, alternative perspectives, and revision of beliefs become weaker, less accessible, and eventually inactive. The seniors who actively resist this entrenchment, who continue to ask themselves whether they might be wrong about something, who change their minds when presented with new evidence, who can sit with a perspective different from their own and genuinely consider it, are doing something that has been linked in study after study to extraordinary cognitive preservation. A long-term investigation from the Karolinska Institute followed over 1,800 adults from age 75 into their late 80s and found that those who demonstrated high cognitive flexibility on standardized assessments showed 51% slower rates of brain atrophy on MRI imaging, dramatically better preservation of executive function, and a 44% lower incidence of clinically significant cognitive decline over the study period. The mechanism is something neuroscientists call cognitive reserve, which I mentioned briefly earlier, but which deserves a deeper look here. Cognitive reserve is essentially your brain's resilience to age-related damage. The more flexibly your brain can operate, the more pathways it can draw upon when older pathways degrade, and the longer you maintain high function, even as the underlying structure changes. When you challenge your own thinking, when you genuinely consider that you might be wrong, when you update a long-held opinion based on new information, you are building cognitive reserve in real time. You are creating new pathways that did not exist a moment before. Here is why this is the rarest of the 6 habits. Challenging your own mind is uncomfortable. It is far easier to remain certain. It is far easier to dismiss perspectives that conflict with your own. It is far easier to spend your days in conversation with people who agree with you and in information environments that confirm what you already believe. But the seniors I have known who remained genuinely sharp into their late 80s and even 90s shared this almost paradoxical quality. They were confident in their experience and humble about their knowledge. They had opinions but held them lightly. They were willing to say, "I had not thought about it that way," or "perhaps I was wrong," with the same ease as they had at 35. Frank, 86, from Madison, Wisconsin, was one of the most cognitively impressive patients I have ever had the privilege of working with. He had been a chemistry professor for 40 years, and when I asked him what kept his mind so sharp, he gave me an answer I have never forgotten. He said, "Every week I find one belief I hold strongly, and I try to argue the opposite of it, just to see if I can. Sometimes I change my mind. Most of the time I don't. But the exercise keeps me from becoming a fossil." That, I would tell you, is the philosophy of an exceptional ager. The practical approach is this. Each week, pick one opinion you hold confidently and genuinely investigate the strongest case against it. Read something written by someone who disagrees with you. Listen to a podcast that challenges your worldview. Have a conversation with someone whose life experience is different from yours. And listen with the intention to learn rather than to refute. You will not always change your mind. You do not need to. The act of considering alternatives is what builds the neural pathways. The synergy tip. Pair this practice with omega-3 fatty acid intake, particularly DHA from fatty fish or high-quality supplementation, because DHA is essential for the membrane fluidity that allows neurons to form new connections rapidly. You are giving your brain both the stimulus and the structural material it needs to remain plastic. All the scientific references for what we have discussed today are linked in the description below. I encourage you to read them, share them with your physician, and use them to advocate for yourself in your own healthcare. And now let me say something from the heart before we close. I work with seniors every day. I see what aging looks like at its hardest and at its most beautiful. And what I want you to take away from this video more than any single habit is this. If you still do even a few of these things at 75, at 80, at 85, you are not just defying expectations. You are demonstrating something profound about what is possible in this season of life. You are showing that age does not have to be a slow retreat. It can be, in many of its most important dimensions, a continued expansion. The habits we discussed today, standing under your own power, cooking your own food, walking with purpose, remaining curious, caring for something beyond yourself, and updating your own mind, are not separate skills. They are facets of a single underlying way of being, a way of remaining engaged, embodied, and alive in your own life. That is what makes you one of a kind, not your age, not your medical history. The choices you continue to make, today and tomorrow and the day after that. If you are not already subscribed to this channel, please take a moment to do so. Every week, I bring you science-backed, senior-specific health information that I genuinely believe can extend the quality and length of your life. Click subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and never miss a video. And now I want to hear from you. Drop your age in the comments below and tell me, of these 6 habits, which ones do you still do? And which one are you going to start working on this week? I will read every single response because this community means everything to me. I will see you in the next one. Take good care of yourself because you are worth every bit of the effort.